Think not that I came to destroy the law and the prophets. The Sermon on the Mount, note the mount that Jesus goes up and compare with that the mountain that Moses went up to get the law. Don't assume that I came to destroy the law and the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. What does that mean? It cannot mean I just came to copy the letter of the law of Moses, because he plainly didn't do that in cleansing the food. So that word fulfill is all important. It applies to the passage in Luke 16:16. The law in the spirit, not in the letter, is the fundamental difference. You want to think of it that way. We are not, and Paul was not under the letter of the law of Moses, but we are certainly to be in the spirit of the law of Messiah. So that fulfilling, let me give you an example. Jesus spoke of himself as being like Jonah in the belly of the whale, comparing himself and his own resurrection with that story of Jonah. That's a partial fulfillment. It's not exact, because Jonah wasn't dead in the whale, still praying. Jesus was dead. So this fulfilling encompasses a lot of interesting things. For example, again, Jesus was asked about divorce, and they objected to what seemed to be an over-strict view of divorce and remarriage. They said, but wait a minute, Moses commanded us to give a divorced wife a certificate and put her away. And what was Jesus' reply? Well, I just came to preach the gospel of Moses and the law of Moses. He didn't say that. Jesus said, wait a minute. Moses permitted you to divorce your wives in Deuteronomy 24. It doesn't say exactly clearly what that reason was. Doesn't matter, because it's over now anyway. Because of the hardness of your heart. But it was not like that from Genesis. And I'm now telling you, Jesus is now contradicting Moses on this point, superseding Moses. So what's the fulfillment of Moses? Spiritualizing, if you like. That is, that you can only have divorce, and Jesus gave one exception for porneia, for infidelity, sexual misdemeanor, unforgiven and continuing. You can have a divorce for that reason, but you cannot any longer, under the Christian dispensation, have a divorce for whatever that failure was in Moses' law in Deuteronomy 24. I think that's absolutely clear. Nobody can deny that he is simply copying in the letter the same law that Moses gave. He didn't do that. So it's a matter of deciding what is this fulfilling. Jesus is taking the whole law to a new level. That's a fulfillment of it. It's not abolishing it. Every jot and tittle of it will be fulfilled, given its full meaning. For example, look at the antitheses in the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard that it was said in the Old Testament, so-and-so, but I'm telling you something else. He moves from out-and-out adultery to lust. You see the fulfillment there? It's not just copying. So the key is the spirit of the law and the letter of the law are not the same thing. Paul does it beautifully in 1 Corinthians 9:20, which should be a verse that everybody ponders long and hard. Paul was not under the law of Moses. Now, he was willing to go under the law of Moses to win some Jews. That's a different subject. Now, he's willing to do Jewish things in order to make converts, but he himself, Paul, is not under the law of Moses in the letter. He is, however, under the law of Messiah. Not to understand the difference in the law of Messiah and the law of Moses is to fail to understand the difference between the two covenants. And that's a fatal confusion. If you're going to insist on Jesus copying and reinforcing the letter of the law of Moses, you're going to have to keep the Sabbath on Saturday. You must keep all of the holy days and the new moons. And you must circumcise everybody physically who wants to be in the covenant. That's part of the ancient law, isn't it? We know that Paul absolutely forbade that sort of thing. So you're going to have to figure this out very carefully. And the key is to see the difference in the spirit of the law and the letter of the law of Moses, which became extinct. It was a shadow only. It was temporary. It came to an end when faith in Messiah arrived. All of that's done in Galatians, of course, with an explosive compulsion on the part of Paul, because Paul is aghast at the idea of somebody trying to mix the law of Moses with the law of Messiah. That would be to throw away your salvation. You're denying the cross, Paul says. Why, in the most impassioned line of all, Paul says, why, if I'm still teaching circumcision, which I'm not, if I was still teaching physical circumcision, Paul says, why in the world am I being persecuted? So I say to all my circumcision-bound in the letter people, all our friends out there, you're going to have to explain What is this whole law which you are forbidden to keep? Paul said, if you get circumcised, in the flesh, that is, physically, as per the Old Testament, then you're going to have to keep, Paul said, the whole law. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You must decide on what that law is which you are forbidden to keep. And many of us were not able to discern that very well. And still today, many have not seen that. So work at Galatians, work it through and see what this temporary custodial guard law was, which ended when faith came. That's to say, faith in Jesus and his preaching of the kingdom.